You've been studying game design and game development for years. You've grown up playing games. You've made some games of your own. Now you have a job interview at a game company. Today, I'm going to tell you how to prepare for your first game design job interview. I've been developing games professionally for over 20 years, and I've conducted hundreds of interviews of game design candidates. In today's video, I'm going to share some tips and advice to help you prepare. Now, there's no silver bullet to guarantee you'll get hired. My advice is to try and help you maximize your chances at success. Tip number 1, be prepared to talk about your resume. The resume is often a starting point during game design interviews. Make sure your resume has some interesting hooks. Try to imagine what parts of your resume are likely going to be the most interesting and asked about. Pay attention to projects on your resume that are similar to the type of game that you are applying for. If you have worked on a PvP side view fighting game and you're applying for a PvP side view or fighting game position, that's probably a good candidate to be prepared to talk about. For the vast majority of entry-level game design applications that I see, the bulk of experience tends to come from a group project. This is often a school project, which is common for those who are enrolled in a game dev-focused college program. Sometimes it's a game made as a member of a game development club. For applicants who aren't coming from college, I often see some indie game work, maybe some volunteer work on an open source game, or a game jam project. When I'm conducting an interview, one of my goals is to zero in on exactly what the candidate's contribution to the project was. I want to know how much hands-on experience you have. I want to know more about your ability to produce and design games. Here's how you can make your interviewer's life easier. Be prepared to talk about the specifics about what you did on these group projects. For example, suppose on your resume you write that you were part of a team of 5 for your senior year project. For your senior year project, you made a Super Smash Bros. Variant in which the players assume the role of vegetables. When you get the opportunity to talk about the project, don't just say that you had a good time and that you're really proud of the game that you made. I'm glad you had a good time, and you should be proud of the game that you made, because making games is hard. Share some of the details to highlight your specific contributions and geek out a bit. Say something like, I wrote all the dialogue for the game. It's challenging to write dialogue for a genre like this because people aren't necessarily there to hear the characters speak. We also found that players really enjoyed it when specific vegetables had a feud or camaraderie with one another, so I wrote some custom logic to detect when specific characters were in a match together so they could have that kind of an exchange. You can see how this extra detail really helped the interviewer understand your specific contribution and that you were really hands-on, boots on the ground to make the game. To recap this first tip, look over your resume, make sure some parts of it stand out, identify what parts of your resume you'd love to talk about, and respond with specificity about your contributions on a project, detail some challenges you faced, and take the opportunity to geek out a little bit. Tip number 2, play the game that you're applying for a position on. Seriously, play the game. If you don't know what game you're applying for, play games by the same studio. Now you might be wondering, can you get a job on a game team without having played the game? Yeah, you can, for sure. But you're going to get a huge leg up if you play the game. Playing the game means that you know what kind of game you're going to be making if you get the job. It means you can talk about the game and have an intelligent conversation if need be during the interview. Playing the team's game shows that you care. My personal opinion, watching a Let's Play of the game on YouTube is just not the same. Play the game. What if you don't really like that genre of game? Doesn't matter. Play it anyway. Maybe you don't want to give the impression that you're not really into the genre or the game and you only played it to get ready for the interview. That's okay. We're all professionals here. You don't have to be a fan of the game to work on it. If you've never played the game before, but you're applying for a job on the team that makes the game, play the game. I always appreciate when somebody comes in for a job interview and says, hey, to be honest, I've never played your game, but as soon as I got the interview scheduled 2 weeks ago, I installed it and played the game, and I'm about 12 hours in. Don't try and fake it. Be honest about how much you've played. You're going to be talking to experts on the game, and they'll be able to tell from a mile away if you didn't actually play the game. For major bonus points, if you are really serious about a particular job on a specific game team, you should be familiar with their competitors too. Look at the major players in the genre. If you're applying for a job at a company, for example, that makes racing games, play their game, then go to Metacritic and look at the top 3 racing games from the last few years and make sure you've played those too. Tip number 3, prepare a story to demonstrate your collaboration skills. Unless you're a solo dev, which you're not because you're applying for a job, well, making games is a team effort. Game teams are looking for strong collaborators, people who know how to build on the ideas of others, people who know how to see situations from another person's point of view, people who understand there's rarely a single best way to solve a design problem. Think about a time that you were working on a team and there was a challenging disagreement. Can you tell me what the disagreement was about? Can you tell me what your position was and why you had that perspective? Now, think back to that disagreement. Can you verbalize the other person's point of view? Being able to look at a design problem from multiple perspectives is an important skill. Can you walk me through how your team established internal alignment? Being able to recount a story that demonstrates your collaboration abilities is really important during a game design interview. Tip number 4, come prepared with some questions. It's very common for an interviewer to ask at the end, "Do you have any questions for us?" Have some good questions prepared ahead of time for this moment. There are some very common questions like, what do you love the most about working for this company? How do you define success for this role? What do you think is the most challenging aspect of this role? What type of behaviors do successful employees at this company exhibit? These types of questions are fine, even great, but since you're applying for a game dev position, don't be afraid to nerd out a little too. You could ask, what type of content roadmap do you foresee for the game? Are you organized more by department or by feature pod? Are we ever going to find out what happens to insert main character name? Choose a question that will help you understand what this job is going to be like, what your future coworkers are going to be like, and whether or not you'd want to work here. And a bonus tip, number 5, don't be afraid to pause and think. Interviews can be stressful. If you need some time to think, just tell your interviewer that. Just say, do you mind if I think about that for a moment? Or maybe, give me a second. Breathe in slowly, hold, and breathe out. Don't worry, you got this. Making games is hard, but you can do it. If you found this video helpful, please share it with a friend and consider subscribing. Happy game making.